here we are, just a few feet up the trail. There's the Sherman Pass Vista area, so this is where Sherman Pass is. That's heading towards the Eastern Sierra. You can go towards Kennedy Meadows, and then the 395. I think this turns into what, 9 Mile Canyon Road, way down, probably about a good hour-and-a-half drive down. We are with a fairly young western white pine. This is Pinus monticola. And if you've seen pines that look very similar on my other previous videos, those you were looking at were sugar pines, which are in the same group, the subgroup strobus, which is the white pine group. Western white pine is fairly closely related to sugar pine, and very closely related to the eastern white pine, which is Pinus strobus back east. Like sugar pine, the needles come in bundles of 5, and the cones are fairly gentle. There are no prickles at the end of the scales. They're kind of shaped similarly to the sugar pine, only much shorter, not even a quarter of the length, quarter to a third of the length at the most. Again, like the sugar pine, the cones are soft, and the branching structure is a bit different from other pines. Most of the other pines here in the Sierras are in the ponderosa group, like the Jeffrey pines and the ponderosas. And in Southern California, you have to include coulter pines and Torrey pines in that group, in the ponderosa subgroup. But in the strobus group, the cones are a lot less heavy. These are probably closer in size to the eastern white pine cones, which I've seen plenty of times because I lived back east for a few years. They're just a little bit, these ones are just a little bit heavier. Eastern white pine cones are a little bit narrower than the western white pines. This is the state tree of Idaho, so this has a fairly wide distribution here in the western United States. They can get very large. They can get up close to 200 feet tall on occasion. Usually they're closer to maybe about 150. And a lot of these trees, with the ones with the upright branches, and that one there in the middle, those are also western white pines, but the ones in the middle are much older and have much wider trunks. In the high Sierras, we're about, like I said, we're about 9,200 feet here. In the eastern Sierras, especially in dry rocky slopes, these trees can get very old, very large, and with extremely large trunks. And these are found all the way up, I believe, into Oregon and Washington and in the northern Rocky Mountains. Another species that I have never pointed out in any of my videos, because you don't find them in Southern California, is red fir. And this is Abies magnifica. I believe this is variety shastensis. Kaufman's book, Michael Kaufman's book, Trees of the Conifers of the Pacific Slope, lists the variety as variety critchfieldii. So there's a little bit of controversy over the variety of red fir. The variety critchfieldii, according to Kaufman, or the shastensis, according to other botanists, have scale bracts coming out from their cones, whereas the Abies magnifica, variety magnifica, is not supposed to have little bracts coming out from their cone scales. It's kind of hard to get close to them, but you won't be able to see them very much in the video, but these cone scales definitely have bracts. I've been here to Sherman Pass before, driving through and trying to find western white pine a couple of years ago, which obviously being here for the second time I found them, the first time as well. That the ones here, like I said, the red firs here definitely have bracts. I've seen some branches where they're actually cones closer to the ground, and in reality they're usually much higher up towards the upper portion of the tree. Well, this one definitely has some cones that are actually on the lower half of their crown, which is not something I'm used to seeing in fir trees. Because I mean, yesterday my video on the Quaking Aspen campground area, those are white firs, and they were variety lowianas. Their cones are generally at the very top of the trees. Here's my friend Brett. He's just taking a little break on the trail. So we'll see if we find any really outsized western white pines today. And here's a smaller western white pine right here. kind of like the sugar pine, their branches kind of spray out, only not as extreme as a sugar pine. And like I said, their cones are much smaller. Hopefully we'll find some really outsized red firs and western white pines we can point out. But this is the Sherman Peak Trail. 2 miles up, 2 miles down, about 700 feet gain. We're going to be following this. We're going to go up to Sherman Peak. Then on the way up there, we'll post some updates and finds. And just like Southern California, greenleaf manzanita, Arctostaphylos patula, and bush chinquapin, Chrysolipus sempervirens, is very common, just like in the Southern California mountains, like the San Gabriels and San Bernardinos. So, before I cut out for the hiking, this is the red fir bark. It's very deeply furrowed, a little bit like white fir. However, there's much more of a reddish hue to it. Get a little bit closer, you could see much more of a reddish hue to the bark of the tree. So this is it. Abies magnifica variety critchfieldii, according to Kaufman and some. But most people would call these variety shastensis. So this would be the Shasta red fir, even though we're way far south of the Mount Shasta area. Way far south. But this is what they are. They're very neatly pyramidal. And at first they can be fairly easily mistaken for white firs. But there are just some subtle differences in the branches. The branching structures are just a little bit different, maybe a little more intricate as opposed to the white fir branches. But I'll check in with some more updates along the trail. And my friend and I are going to take a very leisurely approach. It's fairly warm today. It's probably, well, it's not so bad as it is down in the valley, the Central Valley, where it's probably about 105 right now in Porterville. That's where we're staying. So we're gonna poke around and hike and just gently do a gentle hike today. And the Serrata Peak hike tomorrow is where we should be seeing the foxtail pines. So we'll see you along the trail for more updates.